Now, Bernardo de Galvez was not born a noble. He was a young man who was born basically a peasant. He was born in the little town of Macharabiaya, and I actually had the opportunity to travel to Macharabiaya when I was researching in Spain. It's a little tiny town up in the mountains outside Malaga. I was driving a stick shift car, and so I was rather worried about driving up into the mountains. But fortunately, I was able to make it up to the beautiful little town that has a population of about 700. Now, surprisingly enough, this little town still reveres the Galvez family. The Galvez family were all of them born here. There were 4 brothers, Matias, Jose, Miguel, and Antonio. 2 other brothers had passed away in their youth, but these 4 brothers were the ones who began the clan, if you will, the support network that they created. And certainly the second brother, Jose de Galvez, the uncle of Bernardo, Jose de Galvez is the one who is going to lead the way. This is when you begin to wonder what it is that makes some people successful. Why is it that some young man in this little teeny tiny town should have been recognized by the bishop as a young man with possibilities, a young man that could very possibly become successful? The bishop, Villalobos, took him from Macharabiaya and took him back to Malaga to become a priest, put young Jose in the seminary, and Jose de Galvez soon figured out, by the time he got down to Granada, that maybe the priesthood was not the kind of career that he was interested in. Jose de Galvez became an attorney, a lawyer. And as a lawyer, what Jose de Galvez is going to find is that with his second marriage, he marries a lady who is very much involved in the French court in Spain. Now remember, during this time that France and Spain were basically kissing cousins. Since 1700, the Bourbon monarchs under Louis XIV had been the ones who established the Bourbon throne in Spain. Louis XIV had put his grandson, Philip of Anjou, the first of the Bourbon monarchs, on the Spanish throne. It took him 14 years, and the War of Spanish Succession from 1700 to 1714 finally succeeds in putting Philip of Anjou and the Bourbons in power. But it isn't until the middle of the century, when Charles III, Carlos III, comes to power, that we have the real beginning of the Bourbon reforms. And one of the men who helped start it was Jose de Galvez. Jose de Galvez, through his wife, had become an attorney for the French court. And in one of his court cases, he faced the Spanish crown. He ruled and succeeded in winning his case against the Spanish crown. Now, you would think that Charles III would have called him on the carpet and sent him off to the galleys and punished him, thrown him in jail perhaps. Charles III was an unusual monarch. He appreciated people, regardless of who they were, whether they were nobles or peasants. Jose de Galvez was not of the nobility. His great-grandfather had been an alcalde in Macharabiaya, had been one of the government officials, but they were poor. They were not wealthy. And so when Jose de Galvez rules or succeeds in his court case against the king, King Charles III brought him before the throne and said, "How dare you rule against the crown?" Jose de Galvez turns to the king. Now, this may or may not be true. We don't know. Jose de Galvez turned to the king and said, "Before the king, there is the law." And Carlos III was so impressed that he hired Jose de Galvez on the spot and turned him into his Secretary of State under the Marqués de Grimaldi, and with the support of all of the Spanish crown, Jose de Galvez then has started his upward trek. And because he is a Galvez, he is going to be critical in helping his own family to succeed. He helps Matias, his brother, to become a military official in the Canary Islands. And then he takes his young nephew, Bernardo,